John, great to have you here with us today. Did Apple, in a sense, underestimate competition from makers like Huawei and Xiaomi?
I think Apple's been really underestimating the forces in China for a number of years now, and it's really coming to bite them at this point. One of the ways I think you can see the results of Apple's clear underestimation in China is in other markets, such as emerging markets in India, where Apple has a 1% market share of the iPhone. And I think really what's so interesting in this day and age is on Wall Street, the talk I keep hearing about is around Apple needing to increase services revenue and that being a potential driver behind growth over the next few years. However, what I am stumped on is that unless Apple figures out a way to truly compete in areas like China and emerging markets like in India, they're not even going to be able to reap the benefits of increases in services revenue, which comes from iCloud and, let's say, Apple Music, because the reality is you need increases in device sales of the iPhone itself to increase these other sources of revenue from, let's say, services.
So let me get this straight then. You don't believe that some of the partnerships that they're trying to drum up with the likes of their very arch nemesis in several different capacities, whether it be Amazon and Samsung, you don't think that's enough to backfill in services revenue what they're going to be lacking in the devices?
Yeah, I really don't think so. And the reality is, the forces in China are just so great. I mean, if you look at Huawei right now, what they're actively releasing in terms of smartphones, I mean, they're releasing smartphones that compare in specs to the iPhone XS Max, Apple's top of the line.
John, do we have you? Okay, we may have lost John there for a moment, but we're going to come back to John if we can get him back. We'll see if we can get him back in a moment here. It's been really interesting to watch, though, because this has been an ongoing narrative that we've been watching from Apple, and even as we were discussing.
Do you have John back? We do have John back. Okay, John, you were telling us how Apple potentially is going to be able to become a services company, but there's still a lot of headwinds in that space.
Yeah, I think I'm a bit of an outlier here. I believe that in the long term, the services revenue that Apple is seeing increases in is not going to be a dramatic driver, especially as we compare it to just the massive, massive volume of iPhone revenue over the last 10 years or so now. And so ultimately, I think Apple's savior is really going to have to be figuring out really just what comes after the smartphone. Because at this point, Apple's a great company. They build great products, great software. But in terms of answering the Wall Street questions on where Apple's going, it's going to have to be figuring out what comes after smartphone. And I think at this point, that the really only area that could be in is in the augmented reality space, where obviously we hear about Apple from time to time building prototypes in terms of AR glasses of some sort, where they could make a bet that AR is the future of computing, and because other than that, Apple's already missed the boat on self-driving cars. They've already spun down a lot of their programs on that front.
Right.
I don't really think there's any way to catch up there. And services, again, it's just going to be negligible growth because Apple can't increase device sales of the iPhone, and it's already plateaued, and it's beginning to decrease now.
John, I want to toss one major thought your way as we're in these U.S.-China trade talks, and one major thing that is going to be discussed is the IP side of things and intellectual property, and how much companies from either China are able to use their products and sell their products knowing that they're going to get data on U.S. users and vice versa. How does that impact a company like Apple?
I think for Apple, it only gives them an opportunity to really take a stand and set themselves up as the company in tech to truly be focused on privacy. And I think at this point, if Apple can leverage that and walk the walk in terms of hopefully not experiencing another bug like the FaceTime vulnerability, because I think Apple really does take privacy seriously, and I think they have an opportunity over the next 5 years to market themselves and to market the iPhone brand as the safe place to be for privacy. And in wake of the news over the last few months with Huawei and their CFO being arrested and the charges that were just brought against both the CFO and the company for espionage, I think it really does nothing but Apple in terms of giving them a great opportunity, again, to leverage that. But again, it comes down to how well Apple's marketing team is going to take advantage of that and how well their engineering team is going to truly focus on privacy and make that a staple of their entire brand, which, you know, I think they did a little bit of a test with right around CES when we saw that big billboard in Las Vegas for Apple touting their privacy strengths.
Yeah, it's just
what
unfortunate.
happens on your iPhone stays on your iPhone sometimes.
Unless it's FaceTime.
Yes, unless it's FaceTime. All right.